Good morning, everyone. It is Party Zone here with the Augmentation Evoker PvP guide everyone's been looking out for. As of right now, this spec is a monster. It's doing so well in the shuffle and the 3v3 brackets. It plays well with so many different specs and classes, so you can have a lot of fun on it, play with anybody you want. Things that we plan on accomplishing with this video, we're going to talk about talents, we're going to talk about some stats, we're going to talk about some ability priority, then we'll wrap it up with talking about a few different comps that are doing exceptionally well with the Augmentation Evoker. So just kicking it off, just so you know, I typically have two different talent setups for this spec. I might add a third one later. But as of right now, I run a more off healer supporty spec, and I have a damage spec. Now, as you can guess, the off healer supporty spec just does a lot more off healing, a lot more support for your partner. Some of these talents in here you'll want to change around depending on the comps that you're running into. And this is actually probably the spec that I run more often than not, just because I personally like it more. I like to push the game a little bit more into dampening. It stresses people out, I feel like. So just going down the list here, you can just see I skipped over any of the eruption talents. Eruption doing more damage, eruption essence reduced, eruption cast time reduced, eruption reducing the appeal. Just in general, I'm not really pressing eruption that much. I primarily just press living flame, and then I also try and keep up symbiotic bloom with the emerald blossom. Now, keep in mind our heals are very expensive and intensive on the mana. So if you're just spamming these whatever you want onto your teammates, you're gonna run out of mana really fast, and you won't have it for yourself. One other thing to note as well, Fate's Mirror from the pre-science, as everyone likes to call it, uh, honestly hasn't been doing too much damage. Is it nice to have a random extra 15% more here and there? Absolutely. But in PvP, you have to also remember a lot of people kite. You might not have full uptime on the target. You might be playing with a warrior or something who's getting just chain rooted and CC'd. So Fate Mirror might not always be worth it, but also in that same aspect, something like Reactive Hide is also not always worth it if you're playing into a full caster cleave. This is never going to proc, so get rid of it. Get something else that's going to fit into the comp a little bit better. Maybe pick up tomorrow today. That way you can get a longer time skip. Now, Moats of Possibility is a strong talent on paper, but you also have to remember that people are going to be moving all around the room, so leaving a target to go collect these moats, one's kind of hard. Two, communicating that these moats are spawning in solo shuffle and trying to pick someone specific to get them, also very difficult. Then over here, time skip. This is a big question everyone's been asking. Is it good? It's exceptionally good. The way to think about it is, you have blistering scales, which is a very strong defensive. It puts a big old shield on somebody. You have Ebon Might, also 30-second CD, very short. Verdant Embrace, 24-second CD. When you channel one of these time skips, 2 seconds chops off almost all of the cooldowns. So you can almost just repop it again and maintain a longer uptime. That's more, healing, more self-sustain, more damage, more everything. And then also, just in tandem, whenever you prop things like Evan Might, you'll get Born into Flames, which is more damage and more healing if you need. So this again is the supporty off healer spec. I'll go ahead and post the codes down below just so you can copy them off if you'd like. Then over here on the left side, this is pretty standard across both the devastation, preservation. Just comes down to whatever you need. Now looking over at the damage side of things, this is the damage talent tree again. I will post this one down below as well. But you can see here I actually picked up things like the ricocheting pyroclast, so I can do more eruption damage or essence cost. And then I also avoided these over here. Now, doing so, I did pick up the inner radiance, and that's just because if I do need an off heal, I can heal myself, and it's going to do a little bit more. Since I did lose out on the fat emerald blooms. Now, with that being said, one thing I do like to mention as well is if you are running with a team that can do stuns frequently, the seismic slam could be dropped off the healer one. Personally, I haven't actually really been feeling it too much, so I might just drop it anyways. It's kind of a pain to use. Is it cool to do an AoE stun whenever you do the landslide with a knock up? Yeah, absolutely. But Here's the thing, again, it is very difficult to use sometimes, so it might not even actually be worth it in the long run. I'll do an update later on if that's something that does happen. Now, going into the PvP talents, because this is also a huge question as well. Uh, Things that I almost always run, Dream Protection's really strong if you need to do dispels, like if there's a mage on the other team, you get Sheeps, or if there's a Boomkin, which are very dominant right now, doing root beams on people, you can, get your healer out. Born into Flame is very strong. A lot of people don't know that this is actually stacking. So it can actually stack up the three of the Eben, apologize, the Living Flames. Okay. Then another one, Dreamwalker's Embrace. Dreamwalker's Embrace is really strong, but I feel like sometimes it can be difficult to use. The beam itself is very thin, so trying to keep it tethered to your ally while also hitting the targets you want to hit, kind of difficult. But you can actually see here from a previous game, this thing can pump if you want it to. Like one round, this was one of our wins. My Fire Mage got to do fat damage. I kept Dreamwalkers up the entire time, or at least off CD, I should say, and kept it on at least one of the melee, and this thing did a lot of damage, okay? So, double melee, chances are I'm probably always going to run it, but I might sometimes swap out, a few of these. But Born in Flame, probably always going to run. Now, just overall, stats-wise, I still have a few pieces to replace on here, but I am going full into Mastery. Mastery works very well for me. I like the playstyle. I don't need the extra haste. I'm okay with being a little bit slow on my cast, mainly because you have spells like Ancient Flame, which is going to reduce the cast time of some of your offensive abilities, especially with the healer build that I run. Over here, where I'm primarily casting Living Flame, I'm rarely ever even casting Eruption. After I Verdant Embrace or, Emerald Blossom, my Living Flame's a pretty fast cast on. Now, going into the stats again, I don't really go for haste. Crit's not really that great for us, so primarily I go Mastery and Burst. You can see whenever I'm in PvP combat, that thing shoots all the way up to, right now it's about 17%. Versatility is what I'll be granting to my allies. And then also it increases the duration of those said buffs. So things like Breath of the Eons, Ebb and Might, Shifting Sands, all these things gain a longer duration, which just means more damage and more damage reduction for your team. A few other people out there are talking about running haste. I don't see it being worth it. I don't think it reduces the cast time enough for me to warrant the loss of the buff durations, because at the end of the day, I like just being the support class that's just sitting here buffing my teammates, making them do fat damage. Makes me feel good about myself. Now, going into the rotation here, this is the healing spec. Again, a lot of the times you're going to be using things off CD, like Ebb and Might. You're almost always going to use off CD. Verdant Embrace, I try to use off CD. As long as I don't need to heal myself, I just put it on whoever my ally is that's getting trained. That way we can try and keep the nether tethers up on the other DPS. Now, in reference to things like Landslide, if I have an upheaval coming, I might save it a little bit just to make sure I get that stun. If not, then I'll just use it for peels. And then upheaval's in here to where you're going to use that after your Breath of Eons and after your Fire Breath. So just a quick little rundown. Things you're going to do. You're going to pop Prescience up to make sure your ally has it. You're going to Ebb and Might. Fly in with Eons. I automatically tip the Scales Fire Breath. Pop my heal rank 1, and then I just start spamming my Living Flames. Now, doing so, I'm not really using Essence on Eruption, mainly because I want to save it for my Emerald Blossoms. That way, if I need to heal my friend or put up the Healing Receive, you can see here it's going to do a pretty big heal. 40k, it's pretty great non-crit. Then you'll always have your Verdant Embrace that does a fatal 90k. Does a lot of damage to 20k attack. This whole spec just relies around keeping up buffs. In case you didn't know, your Shifting Sands buff pops up from using your big abilities like Upheaval, Fire Breath. So doing that in the burst when you know your allies bursting with you is going to kind of make sure that they are doing the most damage they possibly can. Then also keep in mind things like Fire Breath is going to drop things like Inferno's Blessing. That's just going to make it where your partners have a chance to do a lot more damage. The rotation's really not complicated. I feel like a lot of times people get more focused on doing damage themselves rather than just doing their job, which is buffing and supporting. Make sure you're keeping blistering scales up on whoever the kill target is, mainly because that again gives you the damage reflection back, but also the big old shield, which scales with health. So the lower health they are, the more shielding it's going to give. I get shields anywhere between 180k and 300k. Outside of that, there's nothing else to really talk about the rotation. If you have any questions or want to know about different situations, please put those comments down below. And the final thing to really touch base on here is the comps. Now, you can go into a bursty comp to where, like, say, with the Fire Mage I was running with earlier when he was just straight pumping. Let me take a look at it here. His Breath of Eons did 120k was his biggest proc. That second one for very little was because the player died at the end. But 120k plus whatever I hit for, which was about 64k on that one. I mean, you're talking just a random hit for 180k plus all the other damage that you're doing on top of it. Very, very strong. So you can run bursts. You just have to be very good at timing your cooldowns with their burst and paying attention to what they're doing as well as yourself. Something that's been very popular, which you guys should go check him out, Trill plays for Liquid. He's been running a lot of Augmentation Evoker. He's been doing exceptionally well. I've been watching a lot of him and learning from him. He's been running a lot of Boomkin Augmentation, and just the sheer pressure that it's doing out the entire time, it just puts the other team so far behind, it's very difficult to recover from. So, Boomkin Augmentation seems very strong. Death Knight Augmentation seems very strong. Demon Hunter Augmentation seems very strong. Classes that are able to do very high sustain are looking to be the best setup. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some cheese stuff out there where you'll see like maybe like marksman hunters or again fire mages or something that hits very hard in a short window to where Breath of Eons is going to just pump and it's just going to global people on the first set of CDs. No way to avoid it. But I think in the long run we're going to see just a lot more sustained comps. I'd like to see maybe some type of sustained enhancement shamans out there. Thorms or something, but as of right now, I think the best comps that we'll see is going to be like Augmentation Boomkin and like Augmentation DK. Outside of that, thanks for tuning in. I definitely hope you guys enjoy it. If y'all have any questions or anything you'd like me to touch base on, or maybe any other videos you'd like to see, please drop them down below. Outside of that, I will catch you guys in the next one. And again, thank you so much for your time today.